Committee to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Sarah.
Johnson?
Here.
Crawford? Here. Klaus?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Maxbauer? Here. Lathrop?
Yep.
Propa?
Yes. Okay, and are there any discussion with the minutes at all?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of February 11, 2015.
Second.
Okay, motion by Wheelock, support by Crawford. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? First public comment, Sarah.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Orders of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, that being heard, anyone for public comment in the audience? Okay, I will go ahead and close first public comment. On to the approval of the agenda. Is there any commissioners that would like to make any changes to the agenda? Staff? Audience? Okay. I will go ahead and move to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by me, second by Lathrop. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On to the consent calendar. We're back to Sarah. It's your day.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will automatically be respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive and file. 1, Resource Recovery Manager's Report. 2, Road Commission Monthly Report. 3, Conservation District Monthly Report. B, approval. 1, Cargo Van Purchase Facilities. 2, Revision Bloodborne Pathogen Policy Appendix B, HR. 3, 2015 hauler licenses resource recovery. 4, establish wedding ceremony fees, county clerk.
Is there any commissioners that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Okay, I am going to remove item B1, cargo van purchase from facilities. Any staff or members of the public? Okay.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the consent calendar as amended with the exception of B1.
Second.
Support.
Moved by Maxbauer, supported by Crawford. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Action on the consent calendar, we did that. Down to special orders of business, there is none. Items removed from the consent calendar. I removed item B1. I believe I missed this when I'm gone, so I just have a quick question. I read through and looked at the memo regarding the cargo van purchase. Was there any discussion? I noticed both dealerships were downstate. Was there any discussion of cost per mile for delivery, or is one of our staff going down to retrieve it?
I assume it'll be delivered.
Oh, you were the I was trying to see who was behind the podium.
He's hiding.
I'm Danny Brown, the Director of Facilities for Grand Traverse County. They deliver it,
Okay.
yeah.
And what is our cost per mile on that?
cost per mile for delivery?
Is there any delivery
No,
charge at
it's-
all?
it's included.
Okay. So that was included in the
Yeah,
price? Okay,
yep.
that was my question.
And with that, can I start I'd like approval, try to get approval for that?
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay,
Hang on.
Okay.
Hang in there, Danny.
all right.
I would move that we approve the purchase of the cargo van.
Support.
Okay.
Danny, do you need this for immediate action, or do you, okay for the end of the month?
No, that's fine. It is going to take 20 weeks to get this.
Yeah, that's why I wondered about the delivery. I thought, well, that's a little interesting. On an order, I was hoping we weren't also paying like $2 a mile or something,
No.
which I've seen dealerships do in my line of work,
Yeah.
so.
It is
okay.
interesting. This is, Ford Motor Company changed this from an Econoline van to, they call this a Transit.
I saw
It's a
that.
completely different look.
It's
And
more
you
like
can
the
get
Sprint.
different roof heights so that you can walk in it or whatever.
Oh,
We're getting the low one, so, and it'll have, it'll be all equipped out with shelving and stuff like that
Okay,
inside.
great. We have a motion by Crawford, supported by, I believe, Max Bauer, to accept the cargo van purchase. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you very much.
On to department action items. We have the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission's request for land acquisition. Mr. Klein is here. You're on.
I'm on. Good evening. Thank you for having me. And on behalf of the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission, I'm Kevin Klein, the airport director, and we're here tonight to discuss a land acquisition issue that we'd like to take place in. And before I get started, though, I would like to take a moment, if I could, to thank Commissioner Johnson for his new volunteer role to the Airport Commission. As it is an all-volunteer commission, I appreciate his time and efforts that he has offered so far and will be offering in the future. So thank you for that. And then our citizen appointments that are representing Grand Traverse County, Dan Arns, who is the current chair of the Airport Commission, Valerie Cochant, our vice chair, Mark Eckhoff, our treasurer, and our newest member, Doug DeYoung. So thank them also for joining our commission and supporting our efforts. Tonight, what we're asking for is, last year in August of 2014, the FAA approved a new GPS approach. It's a satellite approach into the airport. And by approving that new approach, the runway protection zone to our north-south runway on the south end, that would be the south airport end, runway protection zone requires a larger zone than what was there previously. And several buildings fall within that zone. What we're doing is working with the FAA as those buildings become available for acquisition on a voluntary basis. We're approaching those owners to purchase that property and work with them. The Charter Communications building has been on the market for about 4 years, and they reapproached us for the sale of that particular building. It was originally listed at about $580,000. We went through the appraisal process with the FAA and going through the process, reviewing Phase 1 environmental, and we conducted the various reviews, and the good faith offer and settlement for appraisal came in at about $215,000. Along with that, as we've done with the study, with the Phase 1 and putting together the different work to come up with the good faith offer, we've spent about $28,477, and we look to complete it, an Alta survey at about $5,000. As we complete the project, we'd like to demo the building that's on site to return it to level ground. We estimate that at $40,000. So what we do then, once with all those particular funds, once the project's completed, we seek reimbursement funds through the Airport Improvement Program. AIP is what we call it, which is our federal dollar match entitlement dollars that the airport receives for passengers traveling through. So in their packets that was presented and included was a diagram of what we're looking at. The charter building is the L-shaped building that is at the top of that diagram that has become available. The attorney, prior to coming to visit, asked me to make sure that we put forth the proper request for a motion based on the fact of the two counties owning the property for the airport. And the letter that Mr. Judson prepared for me prior to coming, I thought I'd give you a copy of that, and that's in front of you. On page 2 is the 3 bullet points that we're requesting. And the first one, of course, is to approve the terms and condition of the good faith offer of $215,000 for the purposes of expanding and operating the public airport. Also approve the technical amendment, which the amendment we're talking about is the joint operating agreement between the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission and the two counties to add to the legal description the additional property to take forth. And then to reaffirm in that agreement that the Airport Commission has the ability to complete the sale and the good faith offer of that particular property.
I have a question for you. In a motion to approve this, do we have to have a dollar amount listed, or can we just use the term good faith offer of just compensation?
I think you have to use that at this point.
You have
because there's, we don't know what.
And it might change. And can we put all 3 bullet points in one motion?
Yes.
Okay. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve, and then, do you want me to read the entire thing?
I think you can just refer to
We
Chuck
can refer to
Judson's
bullet
letter.
points 1, 2, and 3 from Chuck Judson's letter dated March 9th, 2015, for the purchase of the property on South Airport Road. Is there any support? Okay. Motion by me, support by Wheelock. Any discussion? Max Bauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin, why do we need this particular type of approach?
It's, as the FAA is improving approaches, they're going to a global satellite type approach versus what is called a VOR approach, which is a radio approach. And so they're phasing out all the VOR approaches and then putting the new GPS approaches in. The GPS approaches allow for a more precision approach. And so you think more precise, you would need less space. However, the more precise the approach, the more protection zone the FAA places around it. So they put that forth. It was a decision on the federal government's behalf to put that in. It will really help and support operators that are more of our general aviation operators, small aircraft operators, and our freight operators like UPS and FedEx.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin, is this the first piece of property that's being purchased for this?
That's correct.
If you don't have any successful purchases on the balance, what happens?
Well, as right, each piece that we would purchase, the FAA then, they put restrictions on the current approach. One of the restrictions is the approach can't be used at night. So as the properties are purchased, they will ease those restrictions for the approach as we proceed. We also, what the FAA requires us to do is to try to own all those properties at first. And since the charter is vacant, that's what the FAA has pushed us to do, is purchase that. However, with the other properties, there are mechanisms as aviation easements that we may be able to use. However, the FAA will push us first to own those properties.
Because I see one of the buildings, a couple of them are actually split down the approach line that you
Correct.
need.
And
I just look at it and wonder, geez, the first guy to sell is in the worst spot. You know, everything else is gonna be, now you need it. I mean, I guess it's the only way you can do it, but it seems like it would be nice if it could have been some kind of negotiated purchase without being right out in the open that it's the airport, and then you can accumulate the properties
We
easier.
don't have that ability,
And,
unfortunately.
yeah, right.
That's that transparency.
Yeah.
thank you for your support on that.
Kevin, would we be wise to maybe enter into negotiations for a right of first refusal on those other parcels of property? Which would, maybe at a, a minimal dollar amount, but, those have been found to be binding, historically, because, it may be 15 years until someone in one of these parcels of property no longer is alive or whatever, and family members may want to negotiate a completely different arrangement.
Absolutely. We'll be, since this opportunity came forth because Charter approached the airport, we knew we had this situation, and we've been working on a plan to go forward with the acquisition. Charter approached us for the various reasons of the depreciation of their assets. So they approached us, and we're taking action on this particular item now. However, going forward with working with the FAA, we will be approaching those owners and on a voluntary basis, reaching out to them to see if we can, one, work in right of first refusals or proper easements to help with ease the restrictions in the meantime going forward.
Thank you.
So who's paying for this?
Right now, the funds will come out of the airport revenue funds that Cherry Capital Airport and the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission have, and then we'll seek reimbursement dollars through federal grant and the Airport Improvement Program.
Now, when you look at all these other properties that have to be torn down eventually, or if we can, do you have any estimate about what the total cost will be?
I don't have the total estimate in there because we've just identified those properties per the airport layout plan process with the FAA. Part of that process is identifying those, and then we send that to the engineers to provide us those final costs, which we don't have at this time.
All right, thank you.
But to also answer to that question, each property will have to go through the FAA appraisal process, and that is a detailed process for which helped identify where Charter was at their higher level to bring it into a value that the FAA would be willing to apply grant dollars to.
Yeah.
Trying to remember how I was going to say that now, or ask. So basically, if you offer, say if you bought that for $300,000, you're only going to get a grant up to $215,000. Is that how I'm interpreting it?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And it looks like there's 11 more properties?
Approximately. I believe it's 11 more properties, but I think it's 8 different owners that have been
Okay.
identified.
I have one more question for you, Bob. Because this is being held jointly with Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County, do you agree with the terms that are listed by Mr. Judson? Is this what you would recommend that our county does? Since ultimately you're on the hook for defending us if
Yeah,
there's any
well-
property problems.
Yeah, Mr. Forsythe and I both reviewed it, and we believe that it's adequate.
So these terms are enough for what we need to protect us, okay? Anyone else? Do we need a roll call since it's property purchase or no?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is the approval of the new BPW bylaws. And a lot of this was housekeeping stuff, as I did ask a couple members of the board just about the background on it.
Man, with all the answers.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is John DeVozo, Director of Public Works for the county. And this was officially my first order of business when I started. So we did put some time and effort into it. There were no existing bylaws. My experience has been the board, at least boards, especially of a public nature, need a set of rules, guidelines for not only membership, but also how they conduct their meetings. And with the Board of Public Works, there's Act 185, so it references not only the Open Meetings Act and what we're required to do as a public body, but also what powers we have under Act 185. And really, the powers are granted to the county, and they're administered by the board. So I think these bylaws do that. We did work with our legal counsel in drafting them. So, you know, the big thing is ultimately the county has to, or the county board would have to approve these rules or bylaws and then any future changes.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the Grand Traverse County Department of Public Works bylaws as provided. I would ask that Mr. Cooney does review those before final approval by the end of the month.
Support?
Okay, motion by Wheelock, support by Crawford. Dan, did you?
No.
No, okay. Sonny put in what I was going to say, hey, Bob, have you looked at
Honestly,
always-
I haven't taken a look at it. I wasn't
But if we approve it at the
consulted.
committee level, then
Then
we
we're
will
good.
ask Commissioner
This is why
Prosecutor to
committees
look at
are-
them by the end of the month.
Yeah, this is why committees are helpful, because it does get time to have things looked at. Is there any discussion at all? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John.
Okay, we are on to the 2014 Annual Report of the Grand Traverse County Planning Commission and Planning and Development Department. And John is here.
Good evening, John Syke, Planning Director for Grand Traverse County. And I'm just here to provide you some information on the annual report that we're required to submit, mainly on behalf of the Planning Commission, but it's also a report that we also include information about the department, since we think it's appropriate for you to kind of see how the Planning Commission works with all the other aspects of the department. For 2014, I just want to kind of highlight 4 different parts. The Planning Commission was taking a leadership role in what we're calling the Bayshore Corridor, which is that corridor that extends from Acme 10 miles through East Bay Township, through the city of Traverse City, over to Graylickville and Elmwood Township. And there we're just providing facilitation amongst those 4 communities. You may be seeing a resolution of support that may come in front of you. One of the things that obviously is looking at that corridor, it's a transportation corridor, but it's also, in essence, the main street for this region. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement. Our interest in that was that we did see a lot of activity from those 4 communities looking to improve that corridor, and we thought that there should be a much more concerted effort to coordinate efforts along that corridor. Last year also was the initiation of the Community Development Agreement between Grand Traverse County, the City of Traverse City, and the Downtown Development Authority. One portion of that includes development of an economic development strategy for the county. Northern Nexus, which is the new name for our Next Michigan Development Corporation, was established last year in terms of its marketing name. There were 2 tax abatements that were granted for projects in East Bay Township, Quantum Sales, which will be creating 8 new jobs, and Electro-Optics, which will be expanding, building a new facility, and adding 25 new jobs. And then also last year, housing was something that kind of came, some of it was planned, some of it was by default to some extent, but as you know, we manage the county's community development block grant housing program. Jenny Coulter, who was our housing coordinator, retired at the end of 2014. At this point, we're not filling that position. We're trying to figure out how we're going to manage that program, and maybe it's best suited somewhere else. We're not sure. As you know, the Housing Commission, City Housing Commission has a new director. Maybe there's opportunities in discussion with them if that might be a better fit. We're not certain, but we just want to leave it open, and we didn't want to commit anybody to that position until we kind of figured out where that's going to go. So in the meantime, we do have our current staff filling the program needs. We also have a contract assistant that we use on a part-time basis to also help us out with those activities. For 2015, we have about 5 different areas that we're looking at, maybe 4 different areas that we're looking at. The economic development strategy is something that we're working with right now. We're developing a lot of the background data and information, and we're also going to be interviewing some key community business leaders to supplement the data and information and trends that we're finding in Grand Traverse County. We're also moving forward with some of the housing initiatives. As you know, we have a contractual arrangement with Homestretch. We're looking to get them back on their feet, get the project over at the Depot neighborhood back on track and get that developed. The Planning Commission will continue to work in its facilitatory role in terms of working with local communities. We've been asked by Garfield Township and East Bay Township to facilitate a meeting between those two planning commissions as they coordinate their planning efforts. We've also been working, at least initially, with the Village of Kingsley, Paradise Township, Fife Lake Township, and the Village of Fife Lake on a coordinated economic and community development strategy for that area. And then one of the internal efforts that we're doing is updating the county's long-range capital improvement plan. That was a plan that was initially adopted by this board back in 2008, and it's really just a kind of outline your approach to how to further improve the county facilities and ultimately delivery of services to the public. In that effort, the main focus has been to really continue the focus on this campus, which we call the Boardman campus, and then the Lafreniere campus out on Lafreniere Road, and really to develop those kind of two campuses. We still have some of our operations that are located off-site, for instance, in West Front Street, trying to see if they can be relocated. So that plan, as the Capital Review Committee prepares, that will be presented to you. Ultimately, it'll go to the Planning Commission first and then here, but that will be some recommendations providing you some options in terms of how you engage in those discussions about making future facility decisions. I also, just to wrap it up, did provide you some information about how we're funded. Our revenue, basically the county in terms of its general fund only funds about 38% of our operational costs. A lot of it comes from other resources, and it's primarily just to fund staff. We do use, as mentioned, we do have an assistant in our office that we do on a contractual basis. We found that's a lot easier to do as opposed to trying to think of hiring new staff. We bring in people for very specific projects, and once they're done, we move on, and if we need somebody else for expertise for some other thing, then we bring them in as well. So I guess with that, if you just had any questions or comments.
Do you happen to know approximately how much the county does spend on your department a year?
Well,
with salaries and everything?
In 2014, it was $185,000. That is up this year a little bit. I think it's closer to $200,000 for 2015.
That includes all your staff?
Yeah, the Brownfield program is self-supporting, so that there's certain salaries that are covered by that. The Land Bank contributes money. We also use some of our EPA grant monies and so forth that are all, so it's kind of added supplements that are in with that money as well.
But the $200,000 is your department budget, not all.
Oh, I'm sorry, the full budget?
Not all that's general funding.
No, that was just general fund. No, our full budget's around a little over $400,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Was the significant decrease from 13 to 14, was that Ginny's retirement?
No, that was Midge Werner's retirement.
Okay.
So.
Well, and also the elimination of another technician.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, Ginny Coulter's position, that's self-funded through the Community Development Block Grant Program, so there was no general fund dollars used for that position.
In the housing, affordable housing, I'm probably using Joint Housing Task Force.
Yes.
I know that at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, when we talked about appointments to it, you said probably only a couple of meetings and it would be done. What's the status on that? How many meetings have there been, and what do you see coming out of that?
There have been, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think it was 4 meetings so far, and the March meeting has been canceled, so there will be an April meeting, and I feel that that's probably the last meeting that we'll have. From that will be a summary of the discussion items, but also some recommendations that will come back to the boards, such as the county, the city commission, the township boards as well.
Okay.
If I could add to that, the one thing that the Affordable Housing Task Force has been able to identify is not only a number of tools that are available to the community to make affordable housing available, but also some definite obstructions that some of our zoning ordinances and things have that make it difficult to, you know, it's not just the cost of the property, but we have a lot of restrictions on what a minimum dwelling size can be and all of those kind of things, and that makes it difficult. If you got to build a 1,000-square-foot house with a 2-car garage, you know, the price tag is considerably higher than something a lot of people could afford to live in.
Anyone else at all? Okay. I don't know that we have to, I don't
Yeah,
think we
this
need
is
a
just-
motion,
just
do
for
we?
information.
It's just for information, so we're good. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Mr. Cooney.
Sorry. Bob Cooney, prosecuting attorney. And this is a request for an upgrade to our electronic file management system. And for those of you who are not real techie, I just want to generally describe what that is. Prior to 2009, this is how we stored our criminal files. And so if we needed to get a case, we would go to the file, and this would have our police reports and photos and videos and subpoenas and transcripts and everything else in it. And we'd put them in the file drawer, and if we needed to get it out again, we'd go to the file drawer and we'd write our notes or take it to court, whatever. And in 2009, the county spent roughly $440,000 for a document imaging and file management system that was provided by the vendor ImageSoft, and the software that's used is OnBase. So I'm going to keep talking about ImageSoft, the vendor, and OnBase, the software that's used. That $440,000 was not just for our office, it was also for 4 other offices. I think it was Family Court Records, Finance, can't remember right offhand what the other offices were. Since then, our court, our circuit court, and our district court civil files are stored in OnBase on the county servers. What it means is that instead of these paper files, now I bring my computer to the courtroom, and hopefully I could get my files on there. It's not quite as simple as that all the time, but that's the idea, is that we can access those files on our computer. We can sign complaints and warrants online and ship them to the next person that needs to deal with them. We were one of the first paperless prosecutor's offices in the state. We were the first to use ImageSoft and OnBase, and since then I believe there are 6 or 7 other county prosecutors that are using this same software, or generally the same software. It's been a good change in that we don't have people running around the office trying to figure out whose desk the file is on and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, we haven't achieved the cost savings or the level of efficiency that we had hoped for. Part of that is because after we did our upgrade, we kind of ran out of money, is the way it was explained to me, because what we were supposed to also accomplish was getting the electronic transfer of documents from our law enforcement agencies to our office. And I'll explain that a little bit more later. What we have found is that this system is actually, if it's not obsolete, it's just about obsolete. This is not a new idea. I'm asking for quite a bit of money here, over $100,000, and some of you are probably thinking, well, did Bob just dream this up last week, or, you know, when did this come up? Actually, this is something that I have been dealing with for about 2.5 years now, prior to my assuming my current term of office. I talked to Don Sheehan about a number of issues that I had with OnBase and ImageSoft, and fixes that I wanted to see, and it was back in 2012, actually, that Don told me, well, you know, Bob, there's actually a much better system in place in Monroe County. The prosecutor down there has kind of made some good improvements to what we have, and ImageSoft is offering that to you, and they only want another $100 and some thousand. So, and I attended a presentation with Don where the Monroe County prosecutor, Bill Nichols, showed us how his system worked. And what you have to understand is OnBase is a generic file management and indexing system. And so it can be adapted for use by our office, by the finance department, by the courts. You know, it can be adapted, I guess, for just about any electronic file management system that you want. And that means that ImageSoft comes into your office and they ask you, how do you want this to run? Who does the document go to first? How's it going to get scanned in? Who does it go to next? That sort of thing. This is called workflow and indexing. And the people in our office at the time came up with the workflows and the indexing. The fact is, I think they did a nice job with what they were working with, but there were significant improvements made between 2009 and when Monroe County developed their system. And so even by 2012, we knew that Monroe County had a lot of things that our system did not have. And I'm just going to explain a couple of them to you. I'm going to try to keep this short, but it's not easy. I've been dealing with it for, like I say, 2.5 years. One of the things is this electronic transfer of documents from law enforcement agencies to the prosecutor's office. When there's a complaint, a criminal complaint, the way that we get that paperwork in our office is somebody drives it over. That's literally what happens. It's hard to believe this day and age that those things aren't just zapped over electronically. They're time sensitive. We don't just put them in the mail. Someone's been arrested. We need to get that paperwork processed quickly. Actually, Denise Schmuckel, who I talked to you about a couple weeks ago, for the last 25 years stops at the law enforcement center, or used to be, where the jail is, and she picks up all of the warrants in the morning. That's when we get the bulk of them, and she brings them to the office. And that's been a big benefit, because every time a police officer has to drive it over, they get in their patrol car, they drive that car over. That's time that they're not policing, that they're not doing what you think of as law enforcement work, because they're just delivering paperwork. In Monroe County, those documents are electronically filed with the prosecutor's office. There is a patch, if you will, between the software used by law enforcement and the prosecutor's office, so data is what they call pushed into our system, or their system in Monroe County. Data like the defendant's name, the address of the suspect, the witness names and addresses. A lot of information that right now in Grand Traverse County, we type all that information ourselves, okay? The secretaries get it. They have to type in all of that information. But in Monroe County, a lot of that data is just pushed into their charging forms automatically. So they're not duplicating all that work. Another thing that they do in Monroe County is they have automatic notice of subpoenas when a police officer delivers a subpoena, and you'd be surprised how many hundreds, if not thousands, I'm sure it's thousands of subpoenas we send out every year delivered by police officers. The officer puts a note in their tough book indicating that the subpoena has been delivered, and that's automatically notifying the prosecutor's office in Monroe County that that action has happened. You would be amazed how many phone calls our legal secretaries make on a daily basis just to find out whether someone has been served with their subpoena, because we have to make sure when we get to court we have all the witnesses that we need there because judges don't have a real good sense of humor when we show up and we don't have a witness. Cases can get dismissed, or they can get delayed, and then we send out all those subpoenas again and hope that all of the witnesses show up. So those are just some examples of the efficiencies that they've been able to gain in the Monroe County Prosecutor's Office. I've watched a couple of presentations since by Bill Nichols, where he's shown the better workflows and the efficiencies that they have, and it's good. The other thing is, when this paperwork, if this were a complaint coming in from law enforcement, when it comes into our office, what we do is we scan it in, or one of our secretaries does that. She spends a good part of her day scanning in these complaints, getting them indexed. That means put in the right area of the file management system. And then she shreds it. And then, after that happens, we generate our complaint, and instead of zapping it over to the court like you might expect, it gets printed out again. And then a police officer or someone from our office walks that over to the court. They have to swear and sign in front of the judge, and so those are things that are not happening in our system that I think should be happening and would make things a lot more efficient. As you can imagine, there are cost savings involved in all this. There are cost savings just in the paper and the copiers that we have running, and the shredding and the time spent there. There are cost savings for law enforcement because instead of running complaints over to our office, instead of printing all that paper out, putting it together to go over to our office, they're not going to have to spend that time. They hit a button. There are cost savings for our staff because we have one person who pretty much all day is scanning reports in, putting in that data that's already been put in by the law enforcement folks, and then they're generating complaints, which doesn't happen in Monroe County because they have what they call an integrated warrant manual, where the attorneys are putting the information into the complaints. And so the secretary doesn't have to go back to a separate program to generate those complaints later. Those of you who took the tour with Dave after you were as part of learning about the county, one thing I mentioned was that in the private sector, private law offices have over the years gone from a model where they have perhaps 2 support people or even 3 support people for every attorney, to where they have more attorneys than they do support people. A recent Bar Journal article talked about 2 attorneys sharing 1 support staff, or even 2 or 3 attorneys sharing a support person. And those changes have happened because of technology, because we don't have secretaries typing documents. The attorneys that are coming out of law schools these days, even me, we're composing and typing our own documents, so our secretaries aren't doing those sort of things. But there's also billing software, there's software that, for example, populates fields and forms that you have, like in Monroe County, that automates the process and makes things more efficient. There is no reason in the world why our office shouldn't be functioning like the private sector. We're about 1-to-1 when it comes to attorneys and support staff. I'd like to get it where it's 2 attorneys for every 1 support staff. Funding. I didn't come to the board back in 2012 with this request because I didn't think I knew enough about it, frankly, to do it at that time. Excuse me. What I did do is I submitted a application for a grant. It's called CGAP. I attached an example of another grant application we did in 2014 explaining to the federal government people who give out those grants why we thought we could see some cost savings for our office and for law enforcement. That grant application got denied. It wasn't a surprise. These are kind of long shots. I knew of one county in Michigan that had received CGAP funding, and that was St. Clair County. And we copied their grant application, and we tried the same thing, but it didn't work. Since then, I know Shiawassee County got funding either as a Byrne grant or a CGAP grant. We've got their application now. But I again applied for a grant in 2013, got denied, applied in 2014. That was denied just this past, I think it was November, December, we found out. But when budgeting time came up in 2014 for the 2015 year, I sat down with Dave and Dean, and Don Sheehan, I believe, was involved in the conversation as well. And I indicated that, you know, I'm going to apply for this grant again, but now it's time to do something. And so I want to put the money in the 2015 budget, and I think Dave will tell you that at the time everyone agreed that this was a good idea. It was time to move forward. And so I was one of the things I pointed out was that the past board before you, their number one goal, because you guys set these goals that you have, their number one goal was to save money through the use of technology. So this seemed to fit on all fours with that stated goal. And so I was disappointed when I found out that the money had been taken out of the budget, and I understand that. I know that the board was trying to find $700,000 that they could cut last fall, and this probably seemed like low-hanging fruit, I guess, software. So anyway, unfortunately, I didn't find that out until after the start of the new year, and that's my fault. I wasn't paying strict enough attention because I walked away from our meeting thinking that this was a done deal. But anyway, so I'm back today asking that you reinstate funding, but at the same time, what I want to tell you is I think this delay has maybe been fortuitous. And the reason for that is back in 2013, I started looking at other solutions to our file management problems other than ImageSoft and OnBase. And the reason for that is because I was having so many problems with the ImageSoft company. The solution that I came up with is called Prosecutor by Carpel, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about this. In my memo to you, I explained some of the advantages of Prosecutor by Carpel, but I do want to point out some of the highlights. Prosecutor by Carpel is hosted in the cloud. Right now, our files are stored on internal servers. There's a lot of computer infrastructure, and there's a lot of IT technician time that goes into maintaining those files for all of the departments. It's something that costs money. Carpel, again, is hosted in the cloud. The only thing I need to use Prosecutor by Carpel is a good internet connection. I don't need the servers. I don't need to use our IT technicians' time in order to maintain this. It's kind of like Google Mail. We don't have that application on our server, and we don't have IT people who maintain it. It's web-based. That means I click on the web page and I go to Carpel. I don't have to VPN client, which doesn't always work for us. I can use it anytime, anywhere, on any mobile device. The other thing about Carpel is that it is updated automatically. Now, we were the guinea pig for ImageSoft and OnBase software, at least as a prosecuting attorney's office. And I think it's highway robbery that they want $122,000 in order to just upgrade our software when we probably gave them a leg up in the market as far as marketing to other prosecuting attorneys. But that's the way it is. With Carpel, because it's hosted in the cloud and it's web-based, it's like Google Mail, it's like a lot of programs that you use that are updated automatically. Last year, 150 upgrades. Those upgrades came in 2 new releases that were seamless. Nobody knew that the program was down. With OnBase, we've been having an issue because the OnBase program that everyone in the county uses is being upgraded to something called Unity Client. And what that means is that our IT staff has to get that up and running, make it work with the internal programs that each office has. And I don't pretend to understand this. You'd have to talk to Don about that. But what it means is that on pretty much a daily basis, we get an email telling us to log off our computers. And if you happen to be in court and you're looking at a police report, well, you're just out of luck. And then we get an email 5 minutes later, 15 minutes later, maybe even an hour and a half later, like we had a couple weeks ago, and it tells you you can log back in again. And sometimes this happens multiple times a day. Usually it's for a brief period of time. But the 15 people in my office who use OnBase, this is what they do. They're on that system every day, just about every hour of the day. And when the system is down, well, we're all twiddling our thumbs. Okay? Well, not necessarily twiddling our thumbs, but we have to find something else to do. The maintenance cost for each system is different also. This year, it's my understanding, you'll spend about $128,000 on maintenance for the OnBase system. Now, that's for all of the departments. I asked Dean Bott to give me our share of the cost. That was about I can't remember if it's $27,000 or $29,000. That's the maintenance fee that we pay so that the system is, I don't know, I'm not sure what we're paying it for. I know that about $8,000 of that goes to our IT department because they have to do these upgrades and maintain it and make sure it's working. The other, about $21,000 goes to the ImageSoft Corporation, okay? What we're getting for that money, I don't know, because there's no one at ImageSoft that I can talk to that will give me an answer to any of my questions. 2 years ago, we came up with a list of all the issues we had with OnBase, issues with our workflows, way things were indexed, problems that we had, and I've been waiting 2 years to get any of that done. Guess what? They found out I was going to present to you about Prosecutor by Carpel, and last week I got an email saying that they wanted to do a couple upgrades.
Funny how competition works.
Carpel was not created by an office manager in a single prosecutor's office or even a team of prosecutors trying to figure out workflow. They have a staff of 30 technicians who developed this software, some of them prosecuting attorneys, but mostly computer people. And it's been around since 2006. They're in 190 prosecutors' offices in 19 states, including they just signed a contract with the United States Solicitor General's office. They have offices the size of Kings County, Washington, that's Seattle, over 300 attorneys in that office, and Merced County, California, over 800 attorneys. If this stuff doesn't work, I'm sure they'd be hearing about it. The difference between OnBase software and Carpel, I'm not going to get into the details, but it's basically the difference between the iPhone 6 and a TrackPhone. As far as being user-friendly, and I've seen presentations, at least 3 of them by Carpel now, and at least 3 by Bill Nichols and what ImageSoft has to offer with their upgrade. And as far as user-friendly, intuitive, I don't think there's any comparison. There are also differences with Carpel that functions that OnBase cannot offer, such as we talked about law enforcement interfaces. One of the things Carpel does, it's developed over 250 interfaces with other computer programs, including court docketing systems. And that's important in our office because our secretaries spend a good chunk of their days getting notices from the court, putting those on the calendars, making sure the attorneys are aware of them, making sure they get on all the calendars that need to go out so that we are in court when we need to and where we need to be. You'd be surprised how much time is spent just on this. What Carpel does is it automatically brings that data into our system and it generates a calendar. And it's not like the calendar we have right now, which is called ACT, developed by our Prosecutors Association back in 1985. Not intuitive, wouldn't make sense to anyone. I don't go into ACT unless I absolutely have to because it's so frustrating to use. What does Carpel do? It puts it in a Google Calendar for you, or Outlook, or whatever calendaring program that you're using, something user-friendly. Those are just some of the functional differences between Carpel and OnBase. Surprisingly, the cost to implement Carpel is about $107,000 to $110,000. Just from the maintenance fees alone, the increased maintenance that we pay, I would guess that you'd get your money back in about 6 or 7 years, but when you factor in all the time savings, and there will be time saving with OnBase and its upgrade, there's no doubt. But I think the efficiencies will be greater with Carpel, and you will never be asked to pay another $122,000 just for the latest upgrade. Now, my request in this case, my recommendation is a little odd because I'm asking you for $122,000 for the upgrade of OnBase that's offered by ImageSoft. And obviously I'm not real happy with their software, and I'm telling you there's a better product out there. But I'm a real open-minded sort of guy, and so what I'm asking you to do is to approve the most that I would need to make a switch, which is the OnBase upgrade, so that I can do a request for proposals for Carpel-like solutions, software that's made for prosecutors' offices, something that's hosted in the cloud, something that we don't need to maintain using our own servers. And let me do that RFP, come back to you hopefully by May so that I can give you my recommendation as to which way to go. I want to get as much input from IT as possible, and Don and I have been talking about this. He has some concerns about Carpel, but we had a presentation was it 2 weeks ago, I think, and I think that the Carpel folks were able to answer all of his questions. We were there for about 3 hours, and I guess I haven't heard yet what the problem is. There's something else I want to talk about, and that is when it comes to costs. OnBase has what they call the train the trainer philosophy. What that means is that they train one person in each office that uses their software to show the others how to use it, and if there's a problem, then they show them what to do. And the person in our office is Kathy Paul, our office manager. So if I have a problem, and usually there's a problem at least once a week for me, where I can't get to a file or something like that, she shows me how to fix it. Well, we have someone like that in every office that uses OnBase now, and they spend a substantial amount of their time doing what I believe should be ImageSoft work that we're paying a maintenance fee for. In fact, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, you upgraded a position in circuit court because it was stated that that employee was now spending the majority of her time doing on-base work. And so ImageSoft has managed to pass on the cost of maintaining this program and keeping people informed about, you know, how to fix things when they go wrong. They pass that on to the county. And here's a novel idea. What Carpel does is they have something called a help desk. And so if you have a problem, from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m., 6 days a week, you can pick up the phone and you get a real human being and you can ask them, hey, I'm having a problem with this software. I can't do what I want to do. Can you explain what I'm doing wrong? That's all included in the maintenance fee that is about a third of what you are paying for ImageSoft and OnBase. There is a new urgency to this request that I just found out about a month ago when 2 of our staff were upgraded to this new Unity client. Again, that's where, since 2009, we haven't had any upgrades to the basic OnBase software. This past summer, our IT department began implementing that first upgrade that we've had to that software. I think I told you Carpel updates theirs twice a year at no cost, no additional cost other than their maintenance fee. In doing that, IT found out that with our office, because we have more complex workflows than other offices, that this is becoming a problem because I know that the 2 employees that have it, they have to keep switching back and forth between the old OnBase and the new OnBase to do their jobs. The new Unity client runs slower. Sometimes you sit there and you watch the spinny thing going around for several minutes before you get your document. And anyway, from what I was told by Don, and I had no idea that this was going to happen until, like I say, about a month ago, this is going to become a problem. And the way to fix it is we have to get that upgrade from OnBase, or from ImageSoft. And so this is no longer something that we can just continue to put off. Back in 2012, I'm looking at this as well. It would be nice to have all those functions, but I'm not going to ask the board for it. Now I think it's become almost a crisis. And this is the thing. This is a long process. Even if you were to approve funding for this tonight and for go out and get the Carpel, I'm sure there's going to be about a 6 to 8 month implementation process. With RFPs, we're talking a couple months out. I had thought about coming back with a new budget process in August and asking for the money, but to find out in October or November or December that we're not going to get this money, and then it's going to be delayed another year, I don't think that we can do that. And so my request is to have you approve up to $122,000 from the Capital Improvements Fund for this project. And I have talked to Dean Bott about this. He told me that there is money in the Capital Improvements Fund that would cover the cost of the project. In addition, at the same time, I'm asking you to allow me to put out a request for proposals for a cloud-based solution such as Prosecutor by Carpel, and come back to this board in May with a recommendation for either the OnBase upgrade or one of the cloud-based solutions. Even if we, like I say, if we were to approve this in May, it may be that the funds don't even get expended until 2016 because, like I say, there's going to be contracts that have to be signed and a long implementation process. My hope is that that you will approve this, and I'll come back here in about 18 months or a couple years, and I can show you all of the efficiencies that we've achieved and the costs that we have saved because of this project. And if you have any questions, I'm sorry for the long explanation, but like I say, it's been a long learning process for me.
Bob, can I ask if county purchasing policies weren't written the way they are you going to be able to find, if you do an RFP, are you going to find anything but OnBase and Carpel out there? Are there other softwares that you think might be attractive to a prosecutor's office?
I attached another solution, which is Microfiche by General Code. Now, Microfiche has been used in some smaller counties. Eaton County was the first paperless prosecutor's office in Michigan. They used Laserfiche. Antrim County just got it. But Don doesn't care for it because it uses our servers again. And so there's maintenance costs. It might be cheaper to get the software, but you're having your IT people spend their time and you're using your infrastructure to maintain it. And so there's expense there. So he's not a fan of that idea. Their quote came in just as high as Carpel. And if you can picture basically your files being stored in Windows Explorer, where you have the drop-down files, you got the main file, and then you open that, and there's a bunch of files, and then in there's a bunch of files. That's how they maintain their files. It's not, it doesn't achieve any of the automation that we hope for. They have successfully patched in with law enforcement agencies, not New World. Okay, that's something that only Carpel has done in the past, is get a successful patch with New World systems. That's the software our law enforcement offices use, at least the city and county. But there are a couple of other software companies that have a solution that's specific for prosecutors' offices. And so, I'm willing to take a look at them. One of them hasn't had the widespread use that Carpel has, so I'm real cautious about that. And the other one I know almost nothing about.
Okay. The reason I ask is, that these softwares for various county departments are pretty particular, and it's rare that you get one that's so well developed. You've got I can't remember how many jurisdictions.
190.
190 jurisdictions are using it. In our softwares in county government offices, BS&A has really cornered a lot of the market in the state because they've worked with local treasurers and they've worked with local equalization directors and assessors and come up with this tax type. It works with our processes that are particular to Michigan. And with prosecutors, it's kind of like the same thing. You got this little niche, this software niche, and it's not, they're not going to go out and spend millions of dollars developing a piece of software that such a small market is going to purchase. So when you run into one that really works and it's working well, it's kind of a waste of time to go out and look at others, is what I was driving at. But if you think that it's going to be of value to you to go out for RFPs, I know it's a time-consuming task, but you've already been looking. You've been looking for quite some time, and probably have seen the offers that are out there, the fare that's out there.
Yeah, I haven't asked for estimates from the other cloud-based solutions that are geared for prosecutors, so I don't know what they might charge. The whole thing is time-consuming. I mean, like 3 hours talking to the Laserfiche people last week. With their presentation. So I had considered doing a sole source proposal. I think IT had concerns about that, and I understand they have a lot of questions about all of these, even the OnBase upgrade. I guess I'm willing to do it. I think I'm going to come back to Carpel and say that's the one I really think is going to be the best answer for our problems.
And my my whole thing with this, I talked to Bob 2 months ago maybe about this, and Bob kind of said, you know, this is going to allow me, not maybe right away, because it's going to take a while to implement the system and get it up to speed, but he's going to be able to cut staff to do that. When we talk about $120,000, it sounds like a lot of money, but one position is $60,000. So in 2 years, you get that back, and then if he can run his office without one more person, that's $60,000 a year forever. So that's a really good deal. I'm not, you know, suggesting that he make a commitment to do that, but I am suggesting that it's worth the effort.
Well, he'd have to pay it anyways
That was
for the upgrade.
That was one,
Yeah.
well, that's the thing. I think
Yeah.
this is
He's
going to
kinda
have
stuck
to be
in the
done one way or another. And that's the reason I submitted the CGAP grant application to you, because it shows our cost calculations for where we think there will be savings, and that was part of what we were required to do, is show where do you think you're going to save money. So if you want more detail about that, you can look at that grant application. I indicated earlier, we have one person in our office that spends the majority of her day scanning documents in and then typing up complaints. Those functions aren't necessary anymore because we're getting most of the documents electronically now. And the attorneys are doing their own complaints. You don't have to go into a different software, the ACT program, like she does, to type up the complaints. So I think there will be staff savings. I think it's going to take a while to implement. It's going to take a while to get up and running and figure out, well, where are we at with this? And I'm hoping if there are any staff reductions, it will be done through attrition and not through just chopping. I've got a wonderful staff right now. But if you look at just the maintenance costs alone and the potential for savings with staff time, I think you're going to get your money back. So,
Sonny?
Asked to do this in two pieces. First, I would move to direct the prosecuting attorney, along with the IT director, to develop an RFP for a software system to meet his needs, cloud-based as he's outlined. But I would also state as a condition of that, I'm willing to have a discussion about a sole source purchase if it comes back from their recommendation. You know, these guys have been working on this thing for months, in years, literally. So I guess for right now, my motion is that the prosecuting attorney and the IT director jointly develop a RFP to purchase a new software system for the prosecutor's office. That'll be the first piece, and I'd like to, you know, have a second discussion about that motion before we talk about the other piece that I want to do.
Okay.
Support?
Okay. Discussion?
Well, the discussion.
Dan had his hand up. And
Yes,
then
I have a question. Would you just as soon go with the Carpel and all this work that you're doing comparing other ones?
how about this as a middle ground? I know of these two other companies that do something similar to Carpel, and I could try to look far and wide. I'm sure if they're out there, they would be marketing to us. Usually they show up at our Prosecutors Association conferences. But maybe I get quotes from these two other companies with contracts, and Don can review those, see what his questions are, maybe view presentations. So rather than do a formal request for proposals, we get quotes from all of the known sources for this, because like Dave said, there's not a lot of people out there marketing strictly to prosecutors.
Well, that was the second piece of that was the point about the discussion that I mentioned in the motion, was if you guys are very confident that there's not another product out there that's going to meet our needs, you know, it sounds like the efficiencies that we're going to gain are certainly going to pay for this, not to count the maintenance costs and the fact that we don't have to have another half a room full of servers to maintain it.
And an IT person.
That too. So, you know.
I would also put in there, and I think you said that, but I'm not 100% sure, that since there is such a small number of players in this, I would contact other prosecuting officers that have used it, because there's nothing better than listening to what they have to say, because they'll tell you honestly what the good things and what the bad things are. We just went through this with the state, with the veterans home, and it's amazing. Just the RFP process for software can just get so out of hand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would completely support, if we can legally do it,
We can do it.
with, going with what you recommend there, so.
Well, your point is well taken, and the one thing I will tell you is this has to work.
Yes.
Because if it
Yes.
doesn't work, I don't know where we're at. I
You're
guess-
gonna have one shot at it for a while.
That's right. And actually, my intent, I've seen, like I say, at least 3 presentations by Carpel where they're streaming in, and I can see it myself on the computer, but my intent is to drive down to Missouri, which is where every county in Missouri uses Carpel, and talk to a prosecutor or 2 down there, try it out in the office myself, because it has to work.
My the thing that I would add is, if, and I'm not putting any pressure on you, Bob, but if we approve this at this committee meeting tonight, I'm completely willing to pull it off the consent calendar at the end of the month and authorize you to purchase from a single soil vendor. If we can have any sort of assessment that, it sounds to me like you've already made up your mind what's best for you. I guess I don't have Don Sheehan here this evening. If the 2 of you come together at our meeting at the end of the month and recommend that we go to Carpel, I don't even need to do the RFP thing for me to be happy.
Me too.
And just one other thing I was gonna point out on the IT part of that is, when you do have something that's cloud-based, when they do the upgrades, it's a lot easier. Our IT department doesn't have to get involved, because that's all done almost remotely, so.
Yeah. My concern was the information coming from law enforcement needs to get into the prosecutor's system, as much of that as possible, so they're not typing twice. And the information from the prosecutor's office needs to get back to law enforcement or to the courts back into the on-base system that they're using. So that's why Don was, that was my major concern. I want Bob to get what he wants, but I also don't want him to leave the other departments hanging. And
Well, and we
so
know
I
that
think
we've had
that
a-
they've gone through that analysis, and Carpel will do all
Well,
that.
yeah, that was a concern of mine, because the courts are going to on-base, and, but this is the thing. This is how we get our documents to circuit court. We e-file them. That's the same as every law office in this town. They have to file all their documents with the circuit court through e-filing, and we do it the exact same way. None of those law offices have OnBase or ImageSoft. And so I've tried to figure out how this might be a disadvantage to us, and I haven't heard any negatives. So, but it's...
Well, I'm not going to support the motion because I have taken the time to meet with you. You took 2 hours to answer every one of my questions a couple weeks ago about this. We can yap and yap all we want about efficiency and simpler government and cutting costs. Why don't we just do it? I say we don't need an RFP. This is a proven department head who has made efficient changes over and over again. He has spent years researching this. I say we don't need to waste another minute. I would like a recommendation that approves the amount and tells you to immediately go out and make the change for this. It's time to stop talking and start doing. You've been dragged for years on this. He has done more due diligence, and every question I threw at him, he had an immediate answer. He has been involved with IT over and over again on this. I know you and Don have worked together. You've, dealt with all of this. And what Bob explained to me, which was interesting, was this is just step one in using technology to improve efficiency in all of our law enforcement, our sheriff's department, our courts, our central dispatch. We are really behind at the county in our technology. I ran on a platform of more simple government and efficiency, and why yank it along any further? I'm done. We should just do this.
I think I've probably said before that saving money isn't necessarily cutting.
Right.
At all. It can come, the best way is to reduce costs through efficiencies. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Bob about this, and I just think the way that they're doing things is so horribly inefficient. No business would work that way. My company doesn't work that way. Everything that we have, I have no papers on my desk at work. It's all, I have lots of screens, but we don't have papers. And everything somebody in another office can look at what I'm looking at. And we have several different softwares that all work together, and it's terribly efficient. And I almost feel bad they've had to deal with such inefficiencies for so many years. But I would support also going out and getting the software that you feel is going to be the best thing to get the work done.
Christine?
I am not going to support the motion either, primarily because I, too, have spoken with Mr. Cooney, and he has answered all of my questions, and I believe that he has done his due diligence, and I am, however, prepared to authorize the $122,000, and I am also prepared to agree to what his recommendation is when he chooses to present that recommendation to the county board. But I think going out for an RFP, knowing how many years that he has put into research, and how, one of the things that the prosecutor did tell me in our meeting was that, one of his goals as the caseload grows in Grand Traverse County is not to grow the staff, but to be more productive. And I believe he's done his due diligence, so I'm not going to support the motion.
Sonny?
Madam Chairman, having heard the discussion, I would propose that we amend the motion and authorize the prosecutor to purchase prosecutor by Carpel on behalf of Grand Traverse County.
I would support the change.
Can we amend a motion completely changing it that way?
You're the
Yes, you may.
Is there a conflict of interest?
I think he has a conflict of interest.
I will say that.
Absolutely, as long as the motion maker amends the motion, you can do that.
And I agree with the amended motion.
I will say that I do intend to get quotes from these other two companies regardless, just because
And-
I've got this much time
Prior
into
to
it.
the end of the month,
Yeah.
we'll deal with
And,
it.
and he's going to have to bring in a contract with Carpel anyway.
Right.
So you can just approve the Bob putting the deal together and bringing it back to the board when he's found the vendor.
And
that
that's
he
when
wants.
we identify the money.
So what is the wording of the motion then?
The motion is to authorize the prosecutor to get a proposal contract with prosecutor by Carpel for the purchase of the prosecutor's software for his office.
Okay. Carol
And I
supported
supported that,
Okay.
yes.
Carol, did you?
Got there, sir?
I had something. Oh, I support not having to go out for the RFP, because I think you've done enough work. You've done enough investigation on this, far more than most people would have done. And I don't want to hold you up any further. Being that you said it might be May before you could actually get it
He may
done.
be a
I
little
mean,
busy coming up too.
It's
in
possible.
the
So
county
I think that we should.
sheriffs and prosecutors.
We should make even this process as efficient as possible and not have to go and do all that.
I'd love to get rid of the whole bid purchasing policy if you really want to know, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Do we need a roll call vote because it's for money? Or no, that's not a rule, is it?
Only if there's dissent.
Only if there's dissent, okay. Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank
Good
you.
job, Bob.
And I am sorry for taking so much time.
Don't worry about it.
The discussion about where the funds come from will happen when we come back with the contract
Right.
and authorize the purchase.
That's fine.
Once there's a dollar amount.
Actually,
Okay.
I was ready to vote yes halfway through your speech.
I was ready after I talked to
I'd
him a
hate to
couple
go
minutes
against you
ago.
in court, Bob.
Next, we have administrators report.
You have that. I assume that you can read, so I'm not going to go over all these points. I do want to note that we're meeting tomorrow night with the implementation team. There are a couple of these bullet points here on the Gordon River Dance project are a couple of significant things. I did submit a letter of intent that we approved or we're in agreement with the detailed project report and environmental assessment that was, we had the United States Corps of Engineers had a meeting in August on that. They took those comments, sent them to the DEQ, the EPA, got all these responses back. Now they're ready to submit it to the Corps. And we had to have this updated letter of intent. I did one 2 years ago, and I've updated it. The AECom, who was formerly URS, has forwarded the final plan specifications and cost estimates for the Cass Road Bridge to the Road Commission. And that says on April 6th, but I think it's on March 6th for their review. And they're going to be reviewing that in about about April 24th is a deadline, kind of, that, we're going to need to identify funding for this bridge, or, we can't submit those plans to MDOT. They need to know that the money is obligated before those plans are submitted for their review. At least that's what we heard from AECom, and I see Jim's nodding yes, that's the case. So that's a significant thing I wanted to bring to your attention. We'll probably talk more about that tomorrow night. I don't think there's anything else. Do you have any questions on anything that was in here? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I gotta click back 1 second here. Okay, we have no unfinished business, no new business. Second public comment? No second public comment. Commissioner committee reports.
I understand we have a couple resignations. David, how are we handling the advertising for those positions?
Yeah, we received the resignation of Jen Seaman on Monday, and she will be gone next Friday. She got a job with Priority Health, and we
That
wish her
department's
well.
already short personnel
Done a
because
fantastic job for
Arlene
us.
wasn't replaced.
Best HR, labor relations person I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of them. Some with many, many, many years of experience, and she did both of them well, which is really unusual because it's hard to find a labor relations person that also is personable enough to deal with the HR side of the equation. So she was really fantastic. I also received this afternoon, after I got back from my meeting, that Georgia Durga announced her retirement effective May 15th.
Wow.
And I assume that her deputy director will be taking her place. She asked me about that in the letter, but I'll be talking with her tomorrow probably, and talking about transition and getting something together with the Commission on Aging about how we should proceed to look for a new director.
Was there an update on the posting of the replacement for Pete Bruschi? I saw it was posted.
Yeah, they were taking applications. I'm not sure if the cutoff is
We aren't there yet.
happened or not, but I haven't heard anything further on the hiring process of
Okay.
that.
Anyone else? Dan and then Christine.
I went to Peninsula Township meeting last night, and one of the things they discussed was the National Chariot Festival race out on the peninsula involves 1,000 people, and it's pretty complex. They did okay it, but there's a bunch of contingencies they have to meet up with safety and, closing off the roads and parking and all that kind of stuff. And then they did pass their version of the CPO, and they're going to be, I think, as a group presenting that to us. So just want to report to you about that meeting.
Okay. Chris, for you.
I have a couple of reports. One is I went to the Michigan Association of Counties Legislative Committee meeting in Lansing last Friday. And one of the things that is being talked about behind the scenes is the exemption for veterans for property taxes. And they are, some legislators are thinking about maybe expanding that or adjusting the legislation in some way, shape, or form. So I wanted to let you know that I stopped into Equalization, and Equalization was kind enough and extraordinarily efficient to give me a list of all of the properties that we have in Grand Traverse County that have that exemption, and I forwarded that information on to MAC, just so that they have it. I don't know, I'll keep you, as I hear about how this legislation ebbs and flows, I will keep you informed. The other thing is, there's a bill, which I have in my purse, I'm going to present to the Board of Public Works tomorrow morning. Apparently, Wayne County legislator is attempting to restrict the sale and/or leasing of jointly owned sewer systems, water systems, and Dina Bosworth, who many of you know from MAC, asked everyone in the room, does anybody have a jointly owned sewer system or water system? And my hand went up. And so I'm going to present the bill to the Board of Public Works. I've got a copy of it tomorrow morning at their 9 o'clock meeting, just to make them aware that this bill is out there in case they are unaware of it. The other thing I wanted to let everybody know, I wanted to highlight in Resource Recovery's little administrative report, household hazardous waste is scheduled for March 26th. You need to make an appointment, and to make an appointment, call this telephone number. It is 941-5555. Also, and there will be more information coming forward, Resource Recovery has a tire drop-off event, and that's going to be August 7th and 8th. And people will be limited to 7 tires per resident. I've already told my husband the old tires are coming out of the garage. But more information on that will be coming. March 12th, which is tomorrow at 5:30 p.m., there's a Park and Rec Network open house at the Civic Center, and the public is invited. And I want to let everyone know that I talked to Georgia Durga last Friday. It was Thursday or Friday, that was our last conversation, I can't remember which, but in any event, Georgia has discovered that there is not necessarily a pressing need, and I told Carol and Ron this already at the claims meeting, and I would note that I was not illegal. The 3 of us is not a quorum. But anyway, while the presidential primary is in March, there still is an August primary. And Georgia's preference, she wanted to present this again to the Commission on Aging Board and ask them to reconsider the March election, thinking that that is not enough time for everyone to get their ducks in a row to present, the information to the public. And so we are going to discuss this again at Commission on Aging, and in all likelihood, we will be coming back and planning on a millage vote in August. And so I have canceled the joint meeting that was scheduled before our public health and safety meeting for April. I think I've got everything. Thank you.
Carol?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Bob and then Sonny.
Well, I went to Kingsley and then East Bay last night, and I left Kingsley before they had finished. They did vote on the CPO agreement there, and I think they were the last group to do that. So I think they should be coming to you here soon. So coming to a theater near you.
Sonny?
I'm just reading my emails in reference to the discussion about canceling the Joint Commission on Aging Board of Commissioners meeting. Carol had sent me an email asking to possibly cancel the Public Health and Safety meeting. Carol as of the last time I talked to Chris, we didn't have anything specific on the agenda. I won't see the draft agenda for another couple weeks, but is it the wish of this body we're still 3 weeks away. I'm not sure I'm prepared to cancel public health and safety at this point, but unless something changes, I would be willing to do that.
And my reasoning for doing that was that several of us will be at the MAC conference in Lansing, which gets over earlier in the day, but it is kind of a stretch. to make the 6 o'clock meeting.
The MAC conference, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my concern. I
Right,
believe several of us.
and I did
will
see
be-
the,
yeah.
you know, I'm a little behind on my emails, but I did see that here tonight while we were getting wrapped up. But, you know, I will keep you posted, but as of right now, I have not seen a list of possible items for the Public Health and Safety meeting, so I'm not prepared to cancel it at this point. The other point that I would make is, last night I attended the district community corrections meeting, and our numbers of people that are involved in community corrections are up significantly, and our revenues from the tethers are up significantly. So those are good things. Two things that happened. Number one, we went to the high technology tethers with the GPS in them, so people didn't have to have hardline phones. And number two, when Greg Summers retired, we replaced that part-time position with a full-time position. But it is working. It is truly working. We're getting a lot more people out of the jail, although right now our numbers are climbing again, unfortunately. But we are getting a lot of people out of the jail on community corrections, and we are collecting revenue for those tethers.
Dan?
In that line, I just got an email from Governor Schneider. I've been appointed to the State Board of Community Corrections by Governor Schneider, and I'm excited about that. It's going to be 4 meetings a year in Lansing, and it was really, I got a little choked up over it. I'm very proud to say that I've been appointed by the governor, and I'm looking forward to being helpful to our state. I want you guys to know that.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah, congratulations.
One more quick thing, since we kind of talked about meetings, I know it's not on our agenda, but I think at some point we do need to look at maybe going down to 3 meetings a month. I think that's doable, you know. I know we wanted to try to reduce it even more, but I think at some point we can probably go down to 3. Just be a larger consent calendar. You have to keep the old vocal cords going, but,
Need the practice, it's all good.
you know, so I think at some point we need to probably start looking at that seriously.
I think at some point, you know, that was the plan, but if we're looking at being more efficient and having less hours of work, if that's what our goal is, cutting public interface time with us is not the way to do it. I think we did it by eliminating the commissioners attending certain meetings, but the one thing that we need is the FaceTime, and not a lot of people can easily come to board meetings. So when there's one every Wednesday and they know that they're able to come in and be heard and interact, I would be opposed to any kind of cutting down of public input for a while until our board gets settled. And then I think it's fine. In the time being, we're still offering the public the opportunity. If they don't show up, they don't show up. But I have heard from many people that heard at our organizational meeting that discussion and were really upset by it. Simply because they felt that they wouldn't have the opportunity to be heard. So if we're looking at cutting costs, then we can cut the per diem amounts because we aren't going to as many meetings. If the commissioners are upset because they have to work 4 meetings a week, well, then they probably shouldn't have run to be commissioner because that's been going on for a long time. So at this point, I certainly wouldn't recommend it. When I see all the work that we've done, just alone, Bob Cooney's presentation would have been tacked on to our board meeting. That was important for him to present that and important for us to discuss it. That would have added 45 minutes to another board meeting. And it was in our packets, so any member of the public that would be upset about that cost being spent or supported would be able to be heard. But limiting public input is never a good idea in government.
I respectfully disagree, because, I mean, how many meetings, we haven't been on there this long, and we've had very few public comment. If we went to 1 meeting a month, it'd be one great meeting, and then people would watch.
I would need to have food delivered at that point, and some sort of lazy boy.
Yeah,
as a thing.
and, you know, we'll, like I said, we cross
But,
that
you know, I mean,
bridge.
I think it is to discuss once we get our meetings more flowing. We haven't flowed just yet. We're a, you know, majority new group, and that, I think that time will come to have that discussion. But right now, until we tackle some of the big changes we're looking at, I think limiting public access would be bad.
And I'm trying to get used to the speed of government working. too,
There you
so,
go. It's
you know,
frustrating.
Glacial speed, I
yeah,
refer to it as the
so-
glacial
It
speed
is
of government.
frustrating. Sonny, I would support the canceling of that meeting as I'm at MAC as well, along with Mr. Benda, Christine.
Like I said, I'm not prepared to cancel
No.
public health and safety until I see what comes up from the sheriff's department and the courts and things that are to be addressed at the public health and
Right.
safety.
Well, I
meeting.
understand, but you
Until
did
that-
ask what other people's opinions were, and that certainly would be a stretch for us to get home quickly. As far as my committees, 911 will be meeting in the morning. Central Dispatch has a lot going on. On the agenda tomorrow, I put on the recent city manager case. If you read, there was an issue with the 911 communications, and I'm asking for the deputy director to explain that, and if necessary, it would come to the board level, because it is not at all a good situation what happened there, and that is a county role that was played in it. We are approving perhaps new bylaws in the morning. The central board makeup has changed. They have shrunk it down to a much more manageably sized board, and they are implementing the committee structures similar to what we do with our 4 meetings a month. The central dispatch will be just city fire, metro fire, state police, central dispatch, and I can't remember their sheriff's department in it. It's down to 6 people. And then they'll be implementing the committee structure. And the main committee right now is communications. And right now, there's 2 separate sections of our communications that need to be funded. The first one is the equipment for central dispatch here, located in our building, and that's the phone system and the recorder and that. And then there is also the radio system that we have been discussing. Right now, they're working on, there is an RFP out for a consultant to come in to aid central dispatch with their decision on the radio equipment. And that will be discussed tomorrow morning. We're still going to be discussing the phone equipment. We're still going to be discussing the radio equipment coming forward to the board, certainly before the budget discussion for next year. There's a lot of thoughts of a whole new way of running this department, and that's why right now we need a public health and safety committee just to handle the changes that we're going to be bringing forward with our new chair at 911. So that is in the morning. And then just to catch me up, since I was not here, the CPO, where did we leave that? All the entities are bringing theirs, is it like at one time?
It was
or-
pulled from the agenda.
So there was no discussion as to a
discussion.
No
resolution?
discussion.
I believe, yeah, I think they're going to just have 1 or 2 people bring it.
We're giving them a chance to
yeah.
all approve it,
Right,
their version of
right.
it.
No, I understand
before
that,
they
yeah.
bring it to the
Approve theirs, yeah.
administrator.
They haven't
Theirs.
looked at mine.
Right.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand why the Board of Commissioners is involved in this. The agents are our administrator and the sheriff's department and the entities. So why wouldn't they go to our administrator and negotiate and then come forward with what they agree on?
And
Is
that's
that-
That's what
what
we
they're
want
doing.
them to
That's
do.
what
That's
we're
what they're
asking?
doing.
So they're not bringing their individual contracts to our board?
No.
Okay, good. I just
No,
wanted to
think-
make sure.
I think that's what they're going to try to do. I think they're
No, they're
going to
not.
try to bring it to the county board and ask the county board to direct the administrator to enter into these contracts.
That
with
wasn't
the
my
sheriff.
understanding. My understanding was they, as a group, were going to bring you their proposal and negotiate with Dave directly. That was my understanding.
By going to all the township boards and getting approval of a contract that doesn't look like mine?
The
Yeah.
idea,
I know what it is.
Yeah. Well, they need to
And I don't think I have the
negotiate.
authority to reject those resolutions. I think the Board of Commissioners, they're going around me to you. And let's just call it what it is. They're going to ask you because they don't like the answer I gave them. The answer I gave them was, you pay for the direct costs, like the current contract says, and we'll pay for the non-direct costs, well, they are actually direct costs, their cars and their bullets and their human resources directors and arbitration, and we'll pay all those costs. You pay the direct costs of the officer, the payroll, the fringe benefits. They don't want to do that anymore. They want you to pay more of that. They want to limit their exposure. That's what they're proposing. They're going to propose it to me, and I'm going to say no. So they're going to have to go to you directly, which is around me. So I don't know why they're submitting it to me, because they're not submitting it to me. They're not negotiating with me. So I'm just saying it like it is. What do you want me to do?
Well, this is why I wanted to ask, because and it's my fault, I missed the discussion, but apparently there wasn't one, so.
This is a change in a long-term, long-standing agreement that's been around for a long time, where they pay the direct costs and we pay the other costs. And those contracts have been around for a long time. What changed was back in 2008 or so, a couple of things happened. The way we charge our costs for, legacy costs for retirement, that became a little weird, because the way they were charging it here was one person who had the defined benefit plan that might be working in Garfield Township had an $80,000 retirement cost. And that just doesn't make sense, because what they were doing was taking all the obligations and pouring them into whoever was left in the system that was still active. That just makes no sense. So we distributed it differently starting in 2014. The other thing that happened was, property values went down, and the township officials came in and said, hey, could you hold us harmless, hold us flat for a while? And the board did for about 3 years. They didn't increase the cost at all. So those two things happened. That's changed the way it works, from you pay the direct costs and we'll pay the other costs. It's up to the Board of Commissioners to decide that, I guess. If they want to change that arrangement and start paying more and more of the township officers' costs, that's fine. That's a decision. But, I think that I haven't done the exact calculation, but I think Dean did it for me and said it was about $63,000 that we're going to have to come up with for the 2015 budget, because we got 5% budgeted and they want 2%. And if our health insurance goes up by 8%, they want to pay inflation. So you get to eat that cost. And any costs that go up, and oh, by the way, did I tell you it's hard to hire officers these days at the rates that we're charging? We just went through, in fact, we aren't settled yet in our negotiations with our deputies.
That was my next question.
They might be asking for a lot more than 1.5% raise if we end up in arbitration. An arbitrator could award that to them. We're not asking them to pay that. But they're asking that they never have to pay it. They only want to pay inflation on the cost of those officers. So how do you want to proceed? Do you want me to negotiate with the townships, or do you want to do it directly?
Where did the draft come from that was in the packet last week?
That's the version that I presented to the townships at the meeting that we had.
It didn't come on a direction from the Board of Commissioners. This was your...
I put it on the agenda.
No, I mean, the dollar amount and all of that, the terms of the contract, that was the draft.
The draft that I submitted to the townships, which I think you all got a copy of, but I put it on the agenda so that we could talk about my proposal, that they pay 5%, next year, or this year, and it would be capped at the direct cost per officer based upon average costs, which is a little bit farther up. It's a little more than 5%. At the meeting that we had, I proposed that we could cap it at 3%, go to 3% for this year, and cap it at 3% a year until it hits average cost per officer. But then the meeting was adjourned before they said anything. We didn't negotiate. They had our meeting and it was canceled. Are you
talking about the meeting with the supervisors?
Yes.
Okay.
And it just got ended. I think Commissioner Raxbauer said, maybe you guys want to talk amongst yourselves. End of meeting. So, when do we negotiate?
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, it doesn't happen in chambers, I don't believe, does it? I mean, I thought that the board came up with ideas of what they wanted to see in the contract. They direct you to prepare a contract with those terms, and then you meet with the townships who have their direction from their boards, because the supervisors can't act alone. The board, I mean, that's why they have to pass it by resolution. So then you meet in a room and you see the differences. and then you come up with a compromise, and that comes to the Board of Commissioners. Isn't that the process?
It could be the process.
The county administrator should have been charged with presenting a contract to the supervisors, which is what he did. A copy of that was in our packet last week. We should have discussed it last week, is what that presentation was. We chose not to. We pulled it from the agenda, had no discussion about the proposal from him. But yet we've heard on multiple discussions here tonight that the townships have passed another one. We haven't even seen the one that the county administrator, we haven't even discussed the one that the county administrator provided yet.
But I don't.
But yet we're having discussion about one of the
The townships directed their
townships.
supervisor to create a contract. Where was the step where our board directed our administrator to create a contract? I just saw a contract appear in an agenda last week. Was that direction from the previous board? I mean, I really don't remember.
I mean,
Was this
sheriff has been
based on the
push-
budget that was
The sheriff
passed?
has been insisting upon a standard contract for everybody. I mean, to the extent possible. I mean, there's going to be nuances of difference. Garfield's huge compared to the others. I mean, as far as the number of officers that they employ and so forth. So they're going to be different. They're probably going to have some different needs. But, you know, to the extent possible, to create a standardized version of this contract that works. And it actually is clearer than the ones that we have, which are kind of, you know, some of them are really sparsely worded. Some of them are, you know, the more recent ones are better. And the sheriff has been, you know, saying he wants a standardized contract. So, everybody's been telling me to have a meeting with the previous board, telling me to have a meeting with the township supervisors to talk about this, meet with the townships about it. So, you know, we did. In advance of that meeting, came up with a contract that was a standardized contract with the 5% in it that the board approved. After input by township officials, at least three township officials, and I think the Village of Kingsley commented on it. And the Board of Commissioners approved it at 5% for 2015. And they're going to propose 2% and cap it at the CPI. Right. So that's their proposal. I think that the deal is, first thing, this board represents county, okay? They don't represent townships. Township supervisors represent townships, and township boards represent townships. County commissioners represent the interests of the county. I represent the interests of the county. If I'm supposed to represent the interests of the townships, please tell me, because I can't negotiate that way unless you tell me that. I need to know who I'm negotiating for. So first things first, this is a county concern. And second thing is, you know, townships are going to look out for their best interests. There's no reason for them to not want to pay the direct cost of these officers because these are their officers. We have 24 county officers, 24. We don't have 43. We have 24. All the other ones were asked for by townships or villages for a supplemental police force. You know, Garfield Township is big enough, they could have their own police force, but they'd have to have a captain and a lieutenant and a sergeant and buy the cars and do all the things that the city of Traverse City does. You know, and this is becoming very confusing because now I've got to negotiate with the city of Traverse City on records agreements having to do with the same officers, keeping the records for the self-same officers, and whose officers are they? Are they township officers or are they county officers? You know, the fact of the matter is we can't afford 43 officers. We don't, you know, and that's way too many for a county our size. You know, Midland had 24 when I left. They have 15 now. And they're pretty much the same population that we have. They don't have Cherry Fest and, you know, 500,000 people. So we probably need a few more. But, you know, these are township officers. And it's for the township's best interests. That's what they've decided. The Board of Commissioners a long time ago said the deal is we'll pay for the cars, we'll pay for the, you know, captains, and we'll pay for the, you know, the sheriff and the undersheriff and the payroll and all that's, you know, all the overhead and the building and everything else. All you guys have to pay for is the direct cost of the officer. And I came up with a definition for that. That's how the contract got put together. So that we could kind of put this to bed. with an agreement that settles all those issues and says, this is how it's going to be done. And it's not a change to the current issues. It's not a change to the current proposal.
Does the dollar amount in your draft contract equal a 5% increase, though? Okay, and you did that because you were directed by last year's board through the budget approval process?
Yeah, the budget was approved at 5%.
Right. So I guess I was confused because I know 5 of us have said we don't support 5%. So I thought that the contract that would be presented would be representative of the board that would ask to pass it. And I didn't feel that that contract was, when I read it, representative of the discussions that we've had. So, I know the townships, I've been at several of them, their boards discuss it, and then they put together a contract based on what was the wishes of the board. And I'm wondering, are we operating on the wishes of a previous board? Is that,
Well, the 5% was
We have a
set in the budget.
2015
You've got that
budget
in
that
your
was
budget.
adopted with a 5% increase in it.
so even though more than a majority of people in an open meeting said that they didn't support 5%?
Did they do that?
Carol said it,
No-
Bob said it,
No
Christine
motion
said
and
it.
vote was
There was
taken
no
to the
motion,
best
but
of
we
my
Right.
voiced our
I mean,
opinion.
how do we direct
I-
our administrator then with
By a
what to do?
vote?
Well,
I
By
mean,
a
is that
vote.
what you want? I'm asking you what the appropriate process is.
see, the-
I'm,
can the reason that I voted to remove that from the agenda was that I think that it was premature to involve the board in the negotiation. The negotiation, they're right, it should be between you, the sheriff's department, and the supervisors. So for us to have the contract in front of us and to discuss the specifics of the contract, I felt was premature, that we were being infused into the process too early, that it really should have been, this is what we all agree on, is this what you agree as well? That was my reason for not discussing it last week.
I'm pretty sure, because I found out what the proposal was through the press, I found out that there was another proposal coming forward to all the townships that wasn't the proposal that I gave them. I found that out by reading the Record Eagle. Then I found out from Beth Milligan that it was on one of the township board's agendas, and I looked, and lo and behold, it wasn't a contract that I put together, it was somebody else, it was a different contract. So nobody's sat down with me to talk about it. And at the meeting that we did have, there was, everything got cut short. They wanted to talk. Well, okay, talk. Then come back and talk to me if we're going to negotiate. But to say fait accompli, here's what we want you to adopt. That's, now that they've gotten their boards to adopt that, how are we going to negotiate that?
I don't know that their boards actually
I think
adopted.
it
I was at Acme.
They were
and
directing them. We were at the meetings
I was
listening.
at
Well, they didn't
Acme.
adopt those resolutions?
It was a resolution to allow the supervisor to proceed, starting at that point that they had in
And
front of
those
them. That was what
contracts
I understood in
represented the
Acme.
wishes of the board. So I felt that the contract I read, it didn't represent my wishes, nor many of the other, so was it last year's board's wishes, maybe?
Well, the 5% was adopted by the board in the budget. And township supervisors and a village manager came in and testified that they didn't like that, and they didn't like the way things were being done. And the fact of the matter is, the contracts say that's how it's supposed to be done. You put it in the budget, they can provide public input, and then the board decides. But the idea behind it was the sheriff will pay, if you read the contracts, the sheriff will pay for the cars, or the sheriff will pay for, the uniforms and the guns and everything else, the pads and everything. What it doesn't say is the sheriff will pay, or the county will pay for the cost of the officers. I mean, implied in that is, we'll pay for this, is you pay for that. And that dollar amount is set by the Board of Commissioners. Kind of vague, the way it's written in most of those contracts. Very vague, as a matter of fact. The Board of Commissioners can just say what they're going to pay. I was proposing, instead of having this annual fight over how much it's going to cost, that we do it based upon average cost per officer. And if we want to limit it to a lower amount than 5%, till they catch up to average cost per officer, fine.
So you
Whatever
mean
you
that
guys
amount
want.
per
That's
year?
what I thought I was negotiating. If we're going to negotiate a complete change in this arrangement so that we're now starting to pay for township services, direct services, then I need to know that, because I'm not going to negotiate that. I'm not going to agree to do that because that's not the deal that you made as a board with townships over a long period of years. It's a different direction. I can't go in a direction like that by myself. I need you to talk about it and tell me what to do. All right, so how should, right now, I think that the deal that I proposed was fair, and it was a way to get through the next several years without a fight over this, every year. Everybody knows what it's supposed to be and how it's going to be. There's I've taken off the table all the things that go out forward, like right now, arbitration. When we adopt the budget in December, or in November, we have an average cost per office. It's set. The townships are, aware that's the number, and they know what they're going to pay come January 1st. We don't, though, because they haven't settled their contract. And an arbitrator, it might be 6 months before we know the answer to that. Right now, they're still getting their old health insurance, which costs a lot more money than the money that we've got in the budget. We're not asking them to pay that. If they had their own officers, they would have to have those uncertainties themselves. So I'm not asking them to do anything unreasonable. And I'm just astounded that this isn't even on the agenda, and I'm telling you all the stuff that I was waiting for that agenda item to come up.
Should we place it on the agenda for next week?
I'd just like to know where we're going with this, because
That's my question.
I can't negotiate in good faith without the board telling me whether I'm off base or on base, or, what part they like or don't like about the proposal that I'm putting forward. I've put out a proposal, and I think it's fair and reasonable. If you don't, tell me.
I think the problem was last week that we felt that it was a contract that you wanted us to say that's what it's going to be. And I think we didn't understand that it was, if you could put it on the agenda just for discussion, and
Yeah, that's what I
so
need.
that we can give you some direction
That's
and we
exactly
can
what I
discuss
need.
it, that's fine. I misunderstood. I didn't realize that it was on there just for discussion. I thought it was, this is the contract that you guys are going to vote on. If it is
Yeah.
on there for discussion and you would like some direction and our opinions on it, I think that it can go back on the agenda.
That'd be great.
As a discussion item.
Yeah, I think you need to do that, because that would help me a great deal.
Well, and I think that discussion has to happen before David can be asked to negotiate a contract with the supervisors.
Fair enough. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
If you need direction on that, then we can do that. We can put it on for,
So we can put it on ways.
Dave,
and
Yeah.
have you seen the contract that they're proposing? Does it exist? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I looked at Acme's packet last week and saw the resolution or the contract that they had in there.
So I agree it should go back on the agenda, and then maybe we could do a comparison, contrasting of the two.
Yeah, it's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
think that
the good thing is that I think they agreed to most of the language that's in the contract. I think that
It's just
I think the
dollars.
I think
language
that
The
that puts
dollars
us
that
into a
they're,
negotiating
the-
position where Dave is the one who's supposed to negotiate, and if we're the ones that are supposed to direct him as to how to go.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be involved in the supervisor's contract. We should
Right.
simply direct the administrator of the contract that we ask him to negotiate on our behalf.
there you go.
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
I think so. I think we don't want to we're not, because you're right, we're not on the supervisor's behalf. We don't, we're here on behalf of, and you're here on behalf of the county. And so that's what we should be talking about.
Okay, well, we can add that. Dr. Dan, you're the chair.
You want to add that to the
Next,
agenda next?
Sure.
Okay.
If you guys want me to, I will. Do
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, this is where I had the problem, just to tell you. It says recommendation, approve the attached proposed agreement for
Right.
supplemental sheriff law enforcement. That was the
Yeah,
entire problem I
I didn't
had.
expect that would happen. I was just basically saying I need to know what this looks like. And if you want to amend this or change some conditions on this, I need to know what that is.
We can bring our suggestions next week then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of at sea right now on where to go with this, because I know that what they're going to bring in, I know what they're going to bring in. And it's not acceptable to me, personally. The county has way too many bad deals in its past, and this would be another one, in my opinion.
If we did stay firm and they choose to withdraw, I mean, obviously Garfield can have their own, the charter townships have to provide at least one law enforcement officer. But Garfield, Acme, and East Bay comprise Grand Traverse Metro Emergency Services, which is also authorized to have CPOs and that sort of thing. It's already, the foundation is in place for them to have a police force in the 3 charter townships. So let's just say that that happens, and it could easily happen. There's the appropriate people in place. Oh, an awful lot of our guys are going to be getting a pink slip that next day.
Yeah.
That's a terrible burden to bear for a board that has placed public safety as one of their top priorities.
Well, that can be part of the discussion.
So that's something to think about. There's consideration there.
Well, and I think going into it, I'm fully aware that, yeah, if they come off at 5%, then our edict of saying, well, we don't want to use any general fund is out the door right now, because we are going to say we're going to add more general fund dollars to that. One thing I will say is, yes, I represent the county, but this says District 7 also. I represent Kingsley, Fife Lake, Union, and those members that were not happy at all with that existing contract. There was no, and we've talked about this before, a lot, but I think both ways there was too much grumbling and not enough talking. Even the meeting we had, there should have been more then. I'm still surprised personally that you didn't reach out and they didn't reach out anymore back and forth. But, and maybe I'm just naive on how this works, but you would think as much as people were upset about it, there'd be some communication, to help ease that gap. So.
One thing that upsets me is that the county can be held liable for increases, the cost of these people. And the townships don't want to share that. They don't want to share the risk of it. I don't think that's fair. I think, maybe what percentages we charge, everything we can talk about next meeting, but, I think the risk could be shared equally. That's only fair. It'd be fair between us as people. Why should one person, when you're entering into a partnership, why should one person, that's like asking my partner, Dr. Hartman, to pay 3/4 of our malpractice insurance, even though I do half the work. So I have to admit, I don't like the sound of something happens out of our control and the cost goes up. The cost should go up too.
Chris?
Well, I bear some responsibility for ending the meeting when I did. I did it for 2 reasons. One is I heard from both sides that they wanted one contract. And I also heard from the supervisors that they wanted to be able to talk amongst themselves and take something back to their boards. And it was my understanding, and it still is, that they would then, as Carol says, come back with a proposal. They all have the same proposal. All the boards have passed it. It's not set in stone until we agree to it. And the process, in my mind, would be to present that proposal to you. And, if you cannot reach an agreement with them, then, yeah. But absolutely, you do deserve and should have direction from this board. And I look forward to next week.
As far as that meeting goes, that meeting was to talk about that proposed contract and find out what they didn't like about it, or what they, trying to come up with some kind of compromise. They were going to go off and talk and get back with me. They did not. They went instead to their boards. Now, normally, if the township supervisors and the county administrator are talking, they usually talk it out until they come up with a proposal that they think both boards will accept. They didn't do that. So I think that this is pretty much, I don't know how you're going to get a different proposal from the townships than the one that they all already adopted. So So that's why I say, I need to know what you want, because you represent the county board, not the township boards. And yes, all your people were from a district, and they all live in the state, but you don't represent the state of Michigan's interests either. They're all citizens of our state. So, the township boards and township supervisors are there trying to conserve their money for their jurisdictions. And your job is to conserve and watch out for the interests of county government. Because you were elected by your board to represent the interests of county government, not township government. So I just hope you do that. Because that's what I was hired to do, was represent the interests of county government.
That's an interesting conundrum, and I understand what
I
the
do
doctor
too.
says about it. I do wrestle with that, because, you've got, these people elect me.
I know.
So,
And we like them all.
yeah.
I mean, they're nice people. They're good. Some of them are friends.
Well, and this board's responsibility is still to do what's best for our community as a whole. I spent 18 years on the township board before I came here, but my position significantly changed when I came from the township to the county, because it's an overview of what's best for our community as a whole more, instead of what's specifically good for the city of Traverse City, or for Long Lake Township, or Green Lake Township, or Paradise Township. This board's responsibility is to deal with what's best for our community as a whole.
Well, I think we know what we're adding to the agenda. Everybody bring
We're
a
all set.
sleeping
More
bag and some
more
food.
discussion.
Could I just have the co-chair handle it, and next week, who's my co-chair?
It's Ron or Bob?
Well, yeah, I'll be sick,
Bob.
Ron.
Bob.
Yeah, I'll be sick on
When
Wednesday.
is that, next week?
Next week. Bob's suddenly on vacation. Okay, we have no need for a closed session, so if there's no objections, I will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.